Putin now is devoting his own troops, his own military, just to barely hold together by a thread his sole ally.
He's challenging your leadership, Mr. President. He's challenging your leadership.
Steve, I got to tell you, if you think that running your economy into the ground and having to send troops in order to prop up your only ally is leadership, then we've got a different definition of leadership.
President Obama was not let off the hook Sunday night in his 60 Minutes face-off, and more than a few good points were made as someone finally challenged the POTUS instead of letting him off the hook. And the question of the bare-chested dictator challenging our president on leadership raised more than a few hackles and has already erupted into full-scale discourse on both sides of the aisle. Our guest has been published around the world for the New York Times and the Times of London, to name a few, covering war zones in places such as Iraq and Afghanistan. Currently co-author of The Russia-China Axis, The New Cold War. Welcome Melik Kaylan to the Hardline. Melik, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And let me begin by specifically talking about what Vladimir Putin is doing here. And is it not just possible? We've seen this man with a massive ego, that in essence what he's doing, yes, he's getting his man propped up in Syria, but this is about ego for Putin. He does want to show the president up and does want to be seen as the world leader, yes?
I'm sure to some degree there's truth to that, but I don't think he's not quite as stupid as that. You know, in Russia, they're very, very deeply steeped in strategy, in geostrategy. And if it's a matter of humiliating a rival leader, it has a purpose. It has a long-term vision to it. The KGB are the cream of the crop there, and they are very well trained in 2-3 centuries of Russian strategy. And they have a reason for doing the things that they do. So humiliation is not an end in itself. It has a purpose.
Now, let me play this for you. This is the European Union Foreign Affairs head saying that what we have been talking about, many people have discussed, that Russia's intervention in Syria may indeed complicate the peace process. Here's what he said.
It is for sure a game changer. It has some very worrying elements. The EU, the US, Russia, all of us, we have a common ground, which is the Security Council resolutions that were already passed and the UN framework, and has to be coordinated. Otherwise, it risks to be extremely dangerous.
Now, what she said, of course, my mistake on that. But let me ask you with regard to what we're now hearing from a number of services. I've read this in a couple of different papers and websites, that there are people in the Middle East right now, governments in the Middle East, that actually like what Putin is doing. They're behind him. They do see him as more of a leader than the president. Is that possible?
I think they probably see him as less restrained by all sorts of constitutional and personal constraints, and therefore perhaps somebody who will come in there and cut the Gordian knot more decisively. But you know, yes, who are the people who are going to applaud what Putin does? Now, Putin doesn't do anything for the general welfare of mankind. He does it for a very particular set of his own and Moscow's geostrategic ends. So anyone opposed to that is not going to applaud him. Saudi Arabia isn't going to applaud him. The Gulf isn't going to applaud him. Turkey isn't going to. The people who are going to applaud him are the Shiite Crescent, starting from Iran and going through now Iraq, Syria, down to Hezbollah, because they've become part of the Russian instrumentation in the region. Those are the people who are going to applaud him.
Let's talk a little bit about ISIS, because when the whole Syrian campaign began, there were some people saying that, well, quite frankly, Russia's not that concerned about ISIS. Here's a report today from Reuters. A group of Russians arrested with a bomb preparing to attack Moscow's public transport system and included people trained by the Islamic State in Syria. Do you believe indeed that ISIS is moving into Moscow, that there is a purpose here to stop ISIS from making Russia their next ground of attack?
You mean in terms of Putin moving into Syria?
Well, Putin moving into Syria, but going after ISIS there is simply because he does believe, and there are people, and again I'm asking your opinion, who believe that ISIS is looking for incursions into Russia, is looking to go after people there.
Yes, I think ISIS is looking for that, but I don't think that ISIS is looking for that as part of its, coordinated global geostrategy. I think what's happening is that the Saudis are probably saying to Putin, let's come to an agreement, get rid of Assad, and reduce your aid to our rivals in the Mideast, the Shiites. And we will lower the price of oil, and we will stop supporting ISIS. And the Russians, I believe, after having lots of meetings with them in August, basically said, no way we're going to abandon Assad. At which point the Saudis signed on to the Iran nuclear deal with Obama, in effect signing on to the US vision of the place. At which point I think the Russians then moved into Syria. And in response to that, I suspect that the Sunni powers are now trying to foment trouble out of Dagestan and Chechnya into Moscow, to say to them, well, we have a counter move, and here it is.
Melik, I only have about 20 seconds left. There's a story coming out today from the United Kingdom saying the RAF pilots have been given the go-ahead to shoot down Russian military jets if they are endangered by them. Do you believe that Putin is ready to go to war with either the U.S. or even the U.K.?
No, I don't think so. I think he's pretty badly stretched as it is. I think at this point he's made himself quite vulnerable, and if we move cannily, which I don't know that anyone in Washington can at the moment, we can probably push in one of his sensitive points, whether it be Ukraine or elsewhere, and he'll come tumbling down. He's not up for a big war with the West.
I want to remind everybody once again, the book is called The Russia-China Axis, The New Cold War. That's something else down the road we need to discuss as well as to what Russia is doing with the Chinese. Melik Kaylan, I want to thank you so much for your expertise. We look forward to speaking again. Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes in news continues.